My name is Ahmed Karam. For 67 years, I was a man who had all the answers. As a respected imam in the immigrant Muslim community in America, my entire life was dedicated to the mosque. I taught the Quran. I led hundreds in prayer, in fasting, in pilgrimage. I thought I knew the path to heaven. I walked with a spiritual pride so heavy, I was certain that if anyone was guaranteed salvation, it had to be me. For years, I believed I had found my purpose, my mission. But one day, everything changed. My faith, my family, my life. Everything I thought I knew was turned upside down, because everything I had ever believed was shattered. In the single moment I left my body, when I crossed the veil of life, I didn't see an Islamic throne. I didn't hear the call of Allah. I didn't see Muhammad waiting for me. I saw only a light too pure to be an illusion, and a question that pierced my soul. Ahmed, do you truly know who I am? In that moment, I was just a trembling soul. Face to face with the one I never dared to name, yet he was the one who had loved me my entire life. Even as I rejected him, scene change. Flashback to childhood, music becomes more somber. With a hint of Middle Eastern influence, I was born in Mosul, Iraq, into a devout Muslim family. Before I could even form full sentences, I learned to recite the Surah Al-Fatiha, to bow before Allah with my forehead to the ground, repeating prayers I never dared to truly understand. My childhood was a blur of solemn ceremonies, of lashes from a whip if I forgot a verse, and a deep seeping fear. If Allah was not pleased, I would burn in hell. I have no memory of a loving God. To me, he was a cold, distant judge. And I was just a sinner, trying to survive each test of faith. I loved God, or so I told myself. But I never felt loved back. There was only duty, rules, and the fear of being cast out. At 30, I became an imam. I stood at the pulpit, the man everyone came to for answers. I taught them how to live righteously, how to stay away from the infidels. I was the one who knew, but every night, alone in my small room, I would kneel with no words left. I'd repeat the verses, but my heart was as empty as a dry cup. I thought death would finally bring me to Allah, but every time I presided over a funeral, looking down at a cold, lifeless body, I'd ask myself, have I been good enough, or am I just playing a part? One night it hit me. I preached about faith, but I lived as if I was being watched, not loved. I was a leader no one dared to question, but inside, I wasn't even sure if Allah could hear me. And then, the diagnosis came like a blade. Stage 4 liver cancer. You only have a few months, the doctor said, his voice flat. I didn't cry. I thought, finally, it's time to meet Allah. But that night, something strange happened. I didn't pray from the Quran. I didn't perform any rituals. I just stared at the ceiling, as if someone else was listening, and whispered, if you are real, please be near, just for once. Scene change, the death experience. Music becomes gentle, ethereal, but with an underlying tension. Death didn't come with thunder or darkness. It came softly, almost sweetly. I don't remember my last breath. One moment I was lying in that hospital bed frail, in agony, and the next, I found myself standing there, looking down at my own motionless body. I felt light, as if someone had just unstrapped an invisible lifelong burden from my soul. No more pain, no more fear. A mist of light surrounded me. I could hear gentle whispers like the distant echo of the Quran sung in a holy chamber. The light ahead of me grew brighter, warm, inviting. Just as I'd preached about heaven, I thought, finally, he has brought me home. I moved toward the light. My heart was relieved. All those years of service, of prayer, of renouncing the world, they had finally led me here, to the promised place. But then, the light stopped. I couldn't move forward. An invisible barrier blocked my path. And I felt something strange. The warmth was gone. The light turned cold like a piercing gaze that saw right through me. And a voice spoke. Not in a language, but in pure, unfiltered truth. Do you truly know who the Creator is? The question held no anger, but it was as sharp as a sword slicing through every layer of false belief I had ever built. I wanted to answer, I am an imam. I spent my life teaching others to worship you. But my mouth wouldn't open, because my soul knew I had no answer. I thought, finally, he has brought me home. But I was wrong. So terribly wrong. I wasn't entering heaven. I was being held back between the light and the dark, in a place where all lies are stripped away. Scene change. The false heaven shatters, music becomes dramatic, terrifying, with discordant sounds. I thought I was walking into paradise. But real paradise doesn't disintegrate. The pure jasmine scent from moments before curdled. It became the stench of burning flesh and rotten blood. The air, once warm, was now a thick, oily smoke that seeped into my soul, burning me from the inside out. My knees gave out. I fell. My eyes stung, but I couldn't close them. Every golden ray of light shattered into 1,000 tiny embers. What I had called holy light was now burning me alive. That wasn't light. It was a fire disguised as holiness. A voice thundered, not with anger, but with sorrow. As if I had disappointed someone who had waited an eternity for me to just ask. Ahmed, you preached about the Creator, but did you ever dare to ask, who am I? I couldn't answer. I just repeated the name Allah like a mantra, but the words were empty. They fell into a void. There was no presence, only a crushing silence, and the fury of the truth. Then he showed me something. I saw a figure writhing in the flames, his hands and feet in chains. His face, it looked like the artistic depictions of Muhammad, the prophet I had revered. But now, that face was contorted in a silent, eternal agony. A scream tore from my soul. Beside him, a Quran was burning. The pages curled, the words dissolving into ash. Only one word still glowed like a hot coal, Allah. But as the ash fell away, I saw what was hidden beneath other symbols. Baal, an ancient sun sigil, then a crescent moon. I recognized them. The very idols I was taught were the enemies of faith were now revealing themselves from within the heart of what I called holy. I screamed. No one answered. I didn't just see that my faith was wrong. I saw that my silence had been my consent. I had taught that to question, to doubt, was to be a traitor. But it was I, in my own fear, who had never dared to ask what the truth really was. And now the truth was answering me. With fire, scene change, the void and the true light. Music shifts to a single, low, desperate note, then slowly builds into a soft, hopeful melody. I couldn't see anything anymore. No light, no shapes, just a black abyss, a void where every belief I ever held had crumbled to dust. I stopped calling for Allah. I stopped reciting verses. All that was left was a single scream, the cry of a child who had been abandoned long ago. I just want to know you. I don't want to die in a lie. I didn't know who I was talking to. I just knew I couldn't bear to die in blindness. And in that moment, as the religious fortress I had built collapsed around me, something impossible happened. A light appeared. It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't blinding. It was unlike any light from the religious visions I had ever known. This light was gentle. It felt like a hand being placed on a wound, not to cause more pain, but to begin to heal it. And then, I heard his voice. It wasn't the voice of an angel or a judge. There was no thunder, no fire, no list of rules. It was simply the tenderness of a father who had been waiting for a very long time, standing outside the door of my heart that I had never opened. I know you, and I have loved you, even when you did not know me. I broke down sobbing. For the first time in my life, I cried because I felt loved, not because I was being judged. I had always thought that if the true God came, he would come in thunder. in anger, in punishment. But he didn't. Jesus didn't appear in the fire. He walked into my suffering and called my name when I was at my most hopeless. There was no title, no introduction. But I knew in every fiber of my scorched soul that this was Jesus. Not because I believed a doctrine, but because he knew my name when I had nothing left to offer. When my entire spiritual world had turned to ash, his voice was the only thing that raised me from the dust. I opened my eyes, the smell of antiseptic, the steady beep of the heart monitor, a nurse rushing to call a doctor. I was resurrected, but I was not the same man. I was no longer Ahmed, the respected imam. I no longer believed I knew the way to heaven. I only knew that I had met the truth, and the truth had a name, resurrected, but broken. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a pair of eyes I didn't recognize. The pride of the religious teacher was gone. There was only emptiness and a question that echoed in my soul. Who am I, and who are you? My friends called me a madman. My family wept because I would no longer recite the Quran. The community shunned me. But I didn't blame them, because I used to be one of them. The search for truth, I began to search not to prove anyone wrong, but simply to know what was real. I opened a Bible with hands that had only ever held a Quran. I read like a man dying, of thirst not for knowledge but for life itself. And then I found it. The words that needed no theology, no explanation. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Tears streamed down my face, not from emotion, but because I knew that voice. It was him, the one who had called my name in the darkness. Not a philosophy, not a prophet. He was life itself. I had spent my entire life preaching, but I finally realized I don't need to be right anymore. I just need what is real. And the words of Jesus, they are real. Scene change, the baptism, music becomes powerful, uplifting, a sense of release and freedom. I sat alone, the room so quiet it was suffocating. Nothing left to hold on to, no Quran, no rules, just a whisper, my first true prayer, not to Allah. Jesus, if you are truly the one I used to hate, please forgive me. I braced for thunder, for punishment, but nothing came. No wrath, only a strange, profound feeling I felt. Held, like a child sobbing in the night, pulled into his mother's arms. No questions asked. A hand on my shoulder. The next week, I walked past a small church. I didn't dare go in, but my feet moved on their own. I sat in the very back pew, my head bowed, ashamed, trembling, and then someone walked over. An elderly woman. She said nothing. She just placed her hand on my shoulder. No sermon, no judgment, just a gentle touch, as if God was using her hand to say, "You are not forgotten." I broke down crying, not out of repentance, but because, for the first time in my life, I felt accepted. I was never worthy. I had called Jesus a false god. I had preached against him. I had laughed at those who believed. And yet, when I was broken in the dirt, he was the one who lifted me up. I was never worthy, but I was loved. Long before I ever believed. It wasn't because I chose the right religion. It was because he didn't wait for me to be worthy before he loved me. The baptism, the day I stepped into the water, it wasn't to join a new religion. It was to let the old man die. As the water touched my forehead, I closed my eyes and I saw 1,000 chains shatter in my mind. The chain of fear, the chain of judgment, the chain of feeling I had to earn my way to God. I was no longer an imam. I was no longer a defender of a doctrine. I am no longer a prisoner of the law. I am free by grace. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to pretend to be righteous. I just had to be a son loved, forgiven, and brought back to life. Scene change, the cost and the miracle. Music is both somber and triumphant. I walked out of that church, soaked in baptismal water, but it wasn't holy water that greeted me. It was the fire of this world. The price losing everyone I told my wife. She was silent, then burst into tears. You have betrayed Allah. You have betrayed our family. Before I could say more, she took our children and left. No goodbye. 3 days later, I was formally excommunicated from the mosque. Old friends wouldn't shake my hand. The eyes that once held respect now held only disgust. My phone filled with messages. Apostate. Death is what you deserve. But I wasn't afraid because I had already died once, and I was brought back to life not to please men, but to please God. I lost my family. I lost my reputation. But I gained him, and that was enough. When I was diagnosed with skin cancer, the doctors gave me a few months. I prayed not for a longer life, but for the strength to obey him until the end. A few weeks later, I went back to the hospital. All the tumors were gone. The doctors had no explanation. They called it a spontaneous remission. I called it something else. He wasn't finished with me yet. Washing my mind with living water, I used to live in fear, crushed by the duty to do enough good deeds so that Allah might have mercy on me. But now, I know I am forgiven not because of my works, but because Jesus took the punishment for me. I no longer live for a belief. I live in a relationship with the one who rescued me from my own blindness. Every day, I no longer read to score points for heaven. I open the Bible like a child, rediscovering the voice of his Father. The voice, now a mission. When I tell my story, many cover their ears. Others mock me. Someone threw a rock through my window. But there are also those who listen silently and then begin to weep, because they too were raised in the same fear that I was. I don't tell my story to convert anyone. I tell it because someone right now is screaming in the darkness, just as I once was, and I know that same voice is still searching for them. I know you, and I have loved you even when you did not know me. Outro. Music becomes intimate, gentle. A direct address to the camera. I thought I was strong, a holy man, a spiritual leader, but inside, I was a dying child, terrified to ask the one question I feared most. What if everything I believe is a lie? And so I died to find the answer, not in a philosophy, not in a dream, but in the very hell I had denied. There, everything I had ever preached crumbled to dust, and all that was left was one undeniable truth. I was not worthy, but he still called my name. So if you have ever felt lost, if you have ever felt not good enough, not holy enough, not right enough to be loved, I am living proof. Jesus loves the very people who once hated him. He doesn't demand that you understand all of Scripture. He doesn't require you to clean up your past. First, he only asks for one thing, an honest heart, willing to admit, I want the truth, no matter how much it hurts. And if you have ever whispered into the night, is there a truth greater than what I've been taught? I am here to tell you Kalan yes. And the name of that truth is Jesus. You don't have to die to know it, like I did. Only have to call on him right now. As you hear these words, he already sees you. I have surely seen the affliction of my people, and have heard their cry, for I know their sorrows. Exodus 3-7. I have loved you with an everlasting love. Jeremiah 31-3. I used to live for fear. Now, I live because of unconditional love. I used to work to earn a place at Allah's table. Now, I sit at the table of my Father, the one who found me when I was a stranger, and there's a place at that table for you too. Don't wait until it's too late. Call on his name. He has been waiting for you longer than you can imagine.